Good evening, America, and welcome to the Monday edition. Yep, the last Monday of July 2025 of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to, as always, from the nation's capital and the wiredtofishcoffee.com studios. You know, this Wired to Fish coffee is my favorite cup of coffee. I just had some before I got on air. You can go check it out yourself and also get a fantastic 10% discount and say thank you for their sponsorship of this show by going to wired2fishcoffee.com and using the promo code JustNews. It's that easy. All right, we continue to see major developments on the world stage. President Trump is still in the United Kingdom tonight, and his trip across the pond has already seen some huge successes, not the least of which is a trade deal with the European Union that will spell hundreds of billions of dollars in new tariff revenues and energy purchases from the United States. An incredible new addition to the bottom line of the U.S. government, a way to close that deficit, maybe start to take care of the Medicare and Social Security gaps that we've had for a long time. And just a little while ago, Senator Josh Hawley decided he'd like to take some of that revenue that the European Union is giving us and give it back in the form of rebates, an idea that President Trump first floated last week. This afternoon, the senator introduced that legislation to make that happen. Means you might get a check later this year from all this tariff success. All right, I want to deviate to another story. Lots of other news, and Amanda will get you caught up in a second. We continue to watch the Russiagate scandal, what I call the grand conspiracy, because it really is a 10-year conspiracy. Two major developments. We expect CIA Director John Ratcliffe to release new declassified documents in the next 48 hours. What is it going to show? My sources say it will show that the FBI knew full and well that when they started Crossfire Hurricane and began investigating that it was nothing more than a ruse approved and actually manufactured by Hillary Clinton and her campaign. Those documents will leave no doubt. We already knew that President Obama knew that. The question we had was, did the frontline FBI people know that? We're going to get that answer within documents that John Ratcliffe, the CIA director, expects to declassify as soon as the next 48 hours. And then on another front, everybody go to Just the News around 8:30 tonight, justthenews.com. We're going to have a great story by my colleague, Jerry Dunleavy. It's going to give you the real political beliefs, the real thoughts of the woman, the CIA officer who wrote the Russian intelligence analysis, the rewritten one, not the one that was originally produced for Obama, but the one Obama ordered, saying that Vladimir Putin was trying to help Donald Trump win the election. We now know that the conclusion was significantly challenged, and there's good reason to doubt it. This woman's political views, her thoughts on the Steele dossier, and a whole lot more will shock you, even though you've been shocked enough. We'll have all of those details around 8:30 tonight. Go to justthenews.com. You'll get to see that exclusive here before anyone else. All right, an extraordinary time to turn to my amazing colleague, Amanda Head, for more headlines. Amanda, you've been watching things today. What's on the top of your mind?
Yes, indeed. So, John, the president has made a lot of news while he has been over in the UK, and not just on trade. He also weighed in on the war between Israel and Hamas while meeting with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer earlier today. And while the president is still backing Israel, he addressed the reports of aid failing to reach Palestinians in Gaza because of Hamas and the reports of starvation. Here is what he had to say.
We're also going to make sure that they don't have barriers stopping people. You know, you've seen the areas where they actually have food, and the people are screaming for the food, and they're 35, 40 yards away, and they won't let them because they have lines that are set up. And whether they're set up by Hamas or whoever, but they're very strict lines, so we have to get rid of those lines. But we're going to be getting some good, strong food. We can save a lot of people. I mean, some of those kids that's real starvation stuff. I see it. And you can't fake that.
And the president also brought up the Russia-Ukraine war, expressing his disappointment with Russian President Vladimir Putin refusing to come to the table to end the bloodshed in Ukraine. And President Trump said that he would reduce those 50 days that he gave Putin to reach a ceasefire. That's going to go down to about 10 or 12 days. This is after Russia is continuing their offensive into the country. But President Trump also had some good news, announcing today that he helped negotiate a ceasefire between Thailand and Cambodia. He posted on Truth Social that by ending this war, we have saved thousands of lives. I have instructed my trade team to restart negotiations on trade. I have now ended many wars in just 6 months. I am proud to be the president of peace. So, John, seems like the president is using his deal making for peacemaking.
I have to tell you, even the New York Times is starting to take note. They had an op-ed this morning. They said Donald Trump could win the Nobel Peace Prize. If he does this,
Come to
it's
terms
just
with it, I
what a
suppose.
difference
Yeah.
a few months have made, and what a difference the world feels so different in just 6 or 7 months. There. Something that happened today that caught my attention, Amanda. The State Department put out a statement. It almost never does this, saying the United Nations is going to have a conference this week on a two-state solution. We are refusing to recognize it. We don't believe it's the right thing. This, of course, a couple days after French leader Macron said that he would recognize Palestine as a state. The State Department standing up strongly to those movements. Our first guest today, I'm sure, is going to have something to say about that. He's been to the region a lot. He knows it well. In fact, he's one of the first, I believe, meet with the Syrian leadership. He is an Indiana congressman and a good friend of this show, Congressman Stutzman. Congressman, good to have you on the show, sir.
John and Amanda, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
It is great to have you on. There's a lot to celebrate in just the announcements that seem to come every few hours out of the Trump administration. This EU deal, big energy purchases from the United States, big tariff revenues, hundreds of billions of dollars. I'd like to get your reaction to it.
Well, first of all, I've said it many, many times, is that President Trump is the strongest diplomat. He's the strongest negotiator our country's had since President Reagan. And he, again, is just showing the ability to create these deals. And, one of the things, of course, we all know that America has the strongest military in the world, but I think sometimes we forget that we also have the strongest economy. And that can be used for good in these negotiations rather than just resorting to war. And so President Trump knows how to go into these countries and flex the muscle that the American economy has and pull these deals together. Now, this is going to give us some great access to the European markets. And it's also going to reset the trade policy that we have needed for a long, long time. We're a great country. We're a very generous country. But people are taking advantage of us, and President Trump is the first to say that for, as a president for many, many years. And now he's going around the world truly resetting the trade table that needed to be done for a long time that many of us didn't even realize how bad it was.
Yeah.
Well, and Congressman, there's something else in this that I think is actually good for the EU that not many people are talking about, and that is that a lot of the tenets of this agreement have to do with deregulating in Europe. And sure, that's great for the United States, that's great for our end of the trade deal, but isn't that also good for Europe?
Okay, absolutely. And, President Trump was also, one of the loud voices in telling Europe that they need to figure out their immigration policy as well, because they're seeing a lot of changes in Europe because of the immigration policy that these woke leaders in Europe have followed. And so, no, you're exactly right. While they may not always agree with this, I think in the long run, they're going to realize that, that reality, it will set in, and that good policy on energy, good policy on immigration, good policy on whether it's taxes and the economy, those are all good for them as well. And, we're seeing here in Northeast Indiana, where I'm going to have a job fair here later this week. And we've got 60 companies that are going to be there representing almost 2,000 job openings in Northeast Indiana. And I'm sure that's just the tip of the iceberg, because there's a lot of optimism right now in growth. A couple of factors that President Trump has addressed already is taxes, trade through tariffs. And boy, that last piece that I think would make a big difference is if we would see an interest rate reduction coming out of the Fed. That would just really be a strong move for the American economy to take off even faster than what it is.
I think President Trump may have hinted that to the Fed Chairman when he was with him. He seemed to be going in that direction. We'll see if we get that. Congressman, there's from good to Europe for good to Indiana. The Agriculture Department, we had Brooke Rollins on the show last week, moving bureaucrats out of Washington closer to the people they serve. Indiana farm country going to be the beneficiary of that. I'd like to get your take on that.
You know what? I've believed in this for a long time. I was first elected to Washington in 2010 and just couldn't believe how big the federal government agencies are. And, here they are. They're all inside the bubble there in Washington, D.C. And being from a family farm and coming from business, you often think, where are these people getting their information? The best place they could possibly get it is actually out in the real world where things are happening. And that way they're communicating with agricultural leaders. They're talking with the farmers out on the farm and hearing what the needs are. So the fact that President Trump and this administration are actually doing this is remarkable. Whether it's Department of Energy, that needs to be the next one. Of course, the USDA, which is a large bureaucracy, that one definitely needs to be, kind of pulled apart and spread these people around the country. I think they'll serve the American people much better. And so it's a great move. And I know that Governor Braun here in Indiana is very excited to welcome them here.
I love that. Sir, on that topic, Appeal is a product, I believe it's a product of Bill Gates, but a lot of people are very upset about it because it has been, I believe, deemed to be certified organic, but we don't really know what's in it. I think 97% of the ingredients in it, we just don't know, and you have some legislation regarding that. Tell us about it.
Yeah, this is another great example, Amanda, of why we need these bureaucrats out in Indiana and across the country and other places. But there's obviously an effort to make sure that our food is healthy and it's better for us, especially through this MAHA movement, which I'm a big fan of. And I always was taught by my parents that I am what I eat, and so I couldn't just eat beef all the time. I had to eat my vegetables and fruits, and but this particular product is we don't know what's in it. They're using it for primarily organic fruits and vegetables, and they're portraying it as a coating to help the shelf life of our tomatoes that would be organic, or apples and other products. And they got this through the USDA for approval as a fungicide, and so we don't know all of the chemicals and the product that's inside of this. And this was funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to this company. Again, it may be perfectly fine, but at the same time, we don't know. Right. And transparency is really key here. And I know that we've all had some suspicions of Bill Gates after the COVID vaccines and some of his comments around the world about vaccines and global population. And to me, when I heard about this, I felt like this is something really important that they needed to reveal on a label what actually was in this product. So we filed a bill and looking forward to getting some sort of notice in Washington on this, because it really is important, and it goes right along with RFK's agenda to make us all healthier, and knowing what is on these coatings really is important, especially when it comes to chemicals.
Yeah, no doubt transparency can be such a great solution for that. Sir, before we let you go, you are a co-sponsor for the Equal Representation Act, and it's a reminder that even though we've closed the border down pretty quickly, there are still big issues to be resolved, including making sure that sanctuary cities and states don't benefit by allowing illegal aliens into their community so they can be counted for census, representation, apportionment, federal funds. Tell us why this legislation is so important.
Well, we've watched over the last 4 years during the Biden administration this open border policy, and Democrats are even saying this out loud. We all know, and we all knew in our heart that Democrats wanted an open border because it would affect the elections one way or the other. And last week I saw that a Democrat made that comment out loud. And so I called my staff right away and I said, look, this is a real problem. Here they are saying that they want illegals to be counted in our census because it affects the way that the congressional districts are drawn up. And so there was already another bill that had been filed already. I wanted to co-sponsor that because at the end of the day, there's a lot to clean up when it comes to immigration. President Trump is doing it. The border is closed, 0 illegal crossings as of the month of June. And now, of course, they are going to try to utilize these illegals across the country to dilute the people that truly do have the right to vote in our districts. And so this is a big issue that I'm gonna watch very closely, and we'll amend the bill if there's one that's amending. Do everything I can to draw attention to this. And I think that the majority of Americans would support this as well, unless they're just simply going to be a partisan hack.
Yeah, so important. Common sense things. That's what you've been working on since you got to Washington. We're now getting it through Washington, which is, I think, welcome for the American people. Congressman, a great honor to have you on the show today. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation as always. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we spoke to the chairman of the House Administration Committee. That's the committee that oversees election integrity. His name is Brian Stile. He's leading the ActBlue investigation. Also, he reacts to that revelation that the FBI didn't look thoroughly at the Chinese effort to influence the 2020 election for Joe Biden. We're going to cover all of that right after these messages. Hey folks, in today's world of misinformation and political spin, it's more important than ever to support organizations that put truth and values first. That's why I support and belong to AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens. They're the conservative alternative to AARP, and they're working to preserve faith, family, and freedom, three things that matter to all of us. AMAC members get valuable benefits, discounts on healthcare, travel, and health insurance, exclusive online resources, and a subscription to AMAC's beautiful magazine, one of the best reads out there for an informed patriot like you and I. And all of this is available for as little as $1.20 a month with a 5-year membership. That's what I have, a 5-year membership. Join me. Join the movement today. Visit amac.us/justnews and help AMAC protect America's future.
Welcome back, everybody, to Just the News, No Noise. While all of the Russiagate investigation information is swirling about, you may have forgotten about another very huge potential fraud investigation that's been ongoing surrounding Democrat fundraising platform ActBlue, who have been alleged to have received fraudulent donations from both domestic and foreign sources. So Just the News has been doing a lot of the reporting on this story since it first broke, and a few days ago, 3 House committees subpoenaed ActBlue CEO Regina Wallace-Jones for documents related to the investigation. So what are they looking for? Joining us now to discuss just that, the chairman of the House Administration Committee, one of the committees investigating this, Congressman from Wisconsin, Chairman Brian Stile. Chairman, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on.
So I know from reading all of the investigating or all of the reporting at Just the News and everything that you've done, that you guys have already gotten a pretty substantial amount of information, but you obviously sought something more in this most recent subpoena. What were you looking for?
We want to ultimately get to the bottom of this to make sure that we can prove to the American people whether or not fraud is occurring, and actually put forward legislation to prevent fraud from occurring on any online giving platform. When we look at the security protocols in place at ActBlue, we know that we're incredibly lax. This investigation started almost now 2 full years ago. And we continue now with more and more attention to it. You have been engaged in this from the beginning. We have now subpoenaed the CEO of ActBlue. We have questions that need answers. And at the end of the day, we want to be transparent to the American people about where the funds in American elections are coming from, and ultimately move forward on legislation that prevents fraudulent donations from coming either from non-citizens or from people who are simply trying to transfer funds in the name of someone else, which is what we call smurfing.
Sir, early on, ActBlue gave you some documents. They were very troubling, I know, because it showed they were weakening their fraud prevention rather than increasing it during the 2024 election. Then they stopped and they said, well, we can't cooperate with Congress anymore because the Justice Department is looking at us. Is that a legitimate grounds for refusing to work with Congress?
Now, you can walk and chew gum. We have a legislative intent and a legislative purpose. We need to make sure that we have the laws in place in the campaign finance system that prevents fraudulent activity from ever occurring going forward. The Department of Justice has a separate calling. They may be engaged in any investigation where they believe a crime has occurred, and they're examining the evidence to determine whether or not they can prove that beyond a reasonable doubt. And so my investigation started 2 years ago with the goal of exposing what was going on and moving forward on legislation to get this right. We know billions of dollars move through U.S. elections. We should be concerned of foreign funding at a period of time when we know our hostile countries around the globe, from Russia to Iran to North Korea to China, are clearly engaged and working to try to destabilize U.S. democracy. And so I think it's important we all remain vigilant. We move forward on legislative fixes. We introduced legislation last Congress. We will be introducing new legislation in the coming weeks or months that I think is going to be imperative that we move through Congress to actually prevent this from occurring in the future.
Well, and this is happening up against the backdrop of kind of a rejuvenation of the Russiagate story from 2016, because the world is now finally starting to realize who all was integral to the beginning of that. And Democrats at that time seemed so concerned that Russia was involved in our elections. They seemed so concerned that a foreign entity, an adversary, had their fingers possibly in our election. Do they seem concerned this time around that possibly foreign donations have been contributing?
We don't have nearly enough support. You're exactly right, but I'm not surprised to know that those on the left can be hypocritical in this regard. This is one of those things that really should cut across partisan lines and almost makes you question why it doesn't. We should be digging to the bottom of this. American people deserve to know that the funds inside U.S. elections are from who they say they are. And the protocols in place just don't guarantee that. If you look at the general commercial side, if you wanted to go online and buy an expensive pair of shoes, there's all sorts of security protocols in place to make sure that the person buying it is who they say they are. And the online donation side of this, the credit card name doesn't need to match the donor's name. Some pretty basic things that we know should be in place aren't in place. ActBlue, for example, wasn't even requiring the CVV, that 3 or 4 digit code on the back of your credit card, from being required when we began our investigation. And so at the end of the day, we need to get the laws in place that are right. Everybody, this should be a unanimous type vote when we come to the House floor. Yet we see time and again Democrats refusing to actually engage and dig in with us as to what is exactly going on.
So you talked about legislation, and you've shepherded 2 or 3 really important election reform legislations through the House already, the SAFE Act being among them. We recently got documents from DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, that showed in 2020 China was trying to create a scheme to bring fake driver's licenses in and then have people register and file fake mail ballots specifically to help Joe Biden. That's specifically what the intelligence report said. They found some fake driver's licenses that matched the scheme in O'Hare, and then the FBI stopped the investigation. In fact, it asked all intelligence agencies to destroy their intelligence on this and get rid of it, pull it back, don't let anyone know you've got this intel. Part of the ability of Congress to do its job is to get true information from the intelligence community, FBI, about these sort of threats. How concerned are you about what Tulsi Gabbard has released recently? And is your committee, as the Election Integrity Committee, looking at some of that?
The information that we continue to get is often concerning. We go back and examine the investigation that we had into Biden bucks, where Joe Biden effectively weaponized every federal government agency to the Democrats' political benefit. At that point in time, we were simply trying to get the executive summaries at each of the respective agencies, subpoenaing those documents that should be clear to the American people, and we were being stonewalled. So it's not a surprise that other individuals are finding areas where the Biden administration was engaged in political activity to the attempted benefit of the Democrats. The good news is we were able to overcome the best efforts of the left in the last election because Joe Biden's policies were that atrocious to the American people. We're able to get President Trump in office, Republicans in Congress, and we have an ability not only to uncover exactly what the Biden administration was doing during their 4 years at the helm, but we have an opportunity to put in place rules, laws, and regulations so that going forward, no administration would be able to do what the Biden administration would do. And I would say front and center, the Biden bucks example of how they weaponize federal agencies to the Democrats' political benefit is one of the biggest untold stories of the last election.
Yeah, no doubt.
Mr. Chairman, whether it is your SAFE Act or any of these state measures that have been put in place to fortify elections, Democrats seem to always have the same rallying cry, which is that it disenfranchises voters, it's racist. And yet right there in Madison, in the capital city of Wisconsin, the clerk there left. She went on vacation. Maribeth Wetzel Bell left on vacation, and 200 ballots were uncounted. That to me seems like voter suppression.
The Wisconsin Election Commission just came forward with the report you referenced that lays out atrocious behavior by the clerk in Madison, Wisconsin. They were storing ballots and prepping for the election in an unlocked room. An individual was sleeping in that room after they got information that ballots had not been counted. There was no urgency. No one rang the bell. And as you correctly noted, folks went on vacation. This is an egregious abuse of the trust placed in an election official in the most liberal and progressive city in the state of Wisconsin. Many of our election officials do absolutely terrific work, and we need more people of integrity being willing to step up and serve. But we also have to call out when there are bad apples. And in this case, the WEC report, the Wisconsin Election Commission, lays out exactly what went wrong. And in the state of Wisconsin and as states across the country, we need to make sure that we have rules of the road in place so that these types of abuses never occur in the future. Again, the bottom line here is what we're trying to do is increase Americans' confidence in our elections, because I believe, and the data shows, that when Americans are confident in our elections, they're actually more likely to vote and participate when they know that only, but also all legal votes are counted.
Sir, before we let you go, recently the Trump Justice Department sent a letter to Wisconsin and the Election Commission saying you haven't been complying with the election integrity laws that Congress already has in the book, and you have now put your future federal funding for elections at risk. I just want to get your impression that it seems like there's a new sheriff in town and they're starting to follow your lead in how they go about enforcing these agreements with the states.
Well, it's good to see a Department of Justice that's engaged in election integrity in the way that Pam Bondi and Donald Trump are. I think it's absolutely imperative that we provide more transparency to the American people as to exactly what is going on. I held a hearing just the other day as it relates to voter rolls, making sure that states are doing their job to clean up their voter rolls. And what we have is incident after incident, case after case, where states and counties are not doing the difficult job, or not even the difficult job, just doing the job of making sure that their voter rolls are clean. That's absolutely imperative, in particular in states that have universal vote by mail. So, for example, in the state of California, where they're mailing out ballots to anybody on the rolls, you have to have clean voter rolls. And so it's positive that the Department of Justice, under the leadership of Pam Bondi and Donald Trump, are actually taking this seriously. It's good for election integrity.
Yeah, no doubt.
Chairman of the House Administration Committee, sir, you are always doing such great work, and we very much appreciate you being here, Mr. Chairman. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. We're going to be back on the other side with a lot more.
Hey, it's a new day in America and a new administration in Washington, D.C. There's a lot of excitement and optimism about the future, but the reality is there's a lot of work to do as well, especially when it comes to fixing our broken healthcare system. The truth is that the forces that are responsible for breaking our healthcare system aren't going to simply go away. The challenges our system faces won't disappear overnight. Now more than ever, you need to be prepared. That's where the Wellness Company comes in. Their doctors are medical professionals that you can trust, and their line of prescription medical kits are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you safe and healthy, as well as your family. Whether it's the medical emergency kit, the contagion kit, the first aid kit, or the travel kit, these prescription kits contain an assortment of life-saving medications and guidebooks to assist in the proper use of these medications. From the flu to strep throat, from COVID to the bird flu, from a trip to the beach to a trip overseas, the Wellness Company has a prescription kit designed to keep you and your family safe. Make America healthy again. Start at home. Do your part and protect the health of you and your family. Go to twc.health/justnews today and order. That's twc.health/justnews and use the promo code JUSTNEWS to save 10% off. Welcome back, America. For the last several months, we tried to shine a light on the extraordinary situation in South Africa, a country that is so beautiful and it is so iconic in the world, but it suffers from an extraordinary threat to the liberty of its people. Joining us now, somebody who just wrote a brilliant report on what really needs to be done and just how bad it is in South Africa. He's the executive director of the think tank and advocacy group Lex Libertas. He is Dr. Ernst Roots. Doctor, good to have you on.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on the show, and thank you for talking about this very important issue.
I read this report over the weekend after a mutual friend sent it to me. It is jaw-dropping just how far liberty has eroded in this great, beautiful country of South Africa. Tell us some of the things that most Americans may not know about how bad it is.
Well, thank you. It certainly wasn't fun to write the report, but I'm glad to hear that it's at least as we've seen this last week that we're able to shed some light on the crisis through this. So what we say in the report is that what is typically seen as the crisis in South Africa could be summed up in three categories. The first is a very destructive policy framework in South Africa, with a government that seems to believe that race-based redistribution is the only road to prosperity, not markets, not property rights, not productivity or production, just redistribution according to racial lines. And then as a result of this, we have all these very destructive policy ideas, including the notion that private property has to, or the right to private property has to be eroded, that property has to be confiscated and so forth. So that's one aspect. Another aspect is just general state failure in South Africa. And we see that, for example, with skyrocketing crime rates, with more than 27,000 people murdered each year in South Africa, the murder rate at 45 per 100,000 per year. And we see it with just the collapse of basic services, such as electricity, the failure of electricity, government not able to provide electricity, the water crisis. For example, about 40% of water in South Africa is lost, what's supposed to be drinking water, lost due to theft or leakages. 46% of water is contaminated, and about 2/3 of water treatment facilities are on the verge of breakdown. So that's the collapse of the state. And then the third aspect is the targeting of minorities, the scapegoating, the blame shifting. And we see this especially with Afrikaners being targeted, or Western minorities, you could also say. We see this, for example, with this vast network of discriminatory race laws, 140 race laws on the books in South Africa at the moment, which, as far as we know, is the most race laws any country has ever had in the history of the world. So we have that. Then we have, when the government when they want to expropriate private property, they would say, rest assured, we're only going to take property that belongs to white people. Now, added to that, we have the threats, we have the farm murders that is either denied by the government or justified in some way. And then we have the chanting of kill the boer, kill the farmer by some of the most influential politicians in the country. All of these things added together, of course, provides a very grim picture of what's happening in South Africa at the moment.
Yeah. Dr. Roots, they typically say with economies, a rising tide lifts all ships, but not in an economy where you are manipulating policy, you are manipulating the economy like is happening there in South Africa. Is there a rising tide at all? Are anybody's ships being lifted? Because it seems to me that when you have an economy that is based off of race, no one's really doing well.
Well, in a certain sense, there is one section of the population in South Africa that are doing very well, and that is the politically connected elites, those who are senior members of the ruling party or who are friends with the ruling party. So they implement these race laws under the banner of Black Economic Empowerment, which is the South African version of DEI. Of course, Black empowerment sounds wonderful, but these laws don't do anything to empower Black people in South Africa. Instead, it traps them in a never-ending cycle of social grants, with almost half the population already on social grants in South Africa. So the consequence of these policies are that everyone's getting poorer, especially Black South Africans, except if you are connected to the political elite. There was one recent report that came out, or study, that found that, at least in South African currency, which is the South African rand, about 100 trillion South African rand has been redistributed or moved around over the last few years between 100 politically connected families. And you see that in South Africa. You see the politicians driving these expensive, luxurious vehicles, and while the population is suffering.
Doctor, I want to ask how much China is an instigator in this sort of tip towards socialism, this tip towards anti-Americanism, this tip towards a sort of reverse racism that we've seen where minorities are treated so badly in South Africa now. Tell us whether China's finger is in this drink right now.
Yes, well, I think people in America should not underestimate the role that China is playing currently in South Africa on a variety of levels. The first is just the Belt and Road Initiative of the Chinese government and its attempts to, you could say, strengthen its grip on the African continent,
right,
which of course would provide them with access to resources and so forth. Another is when these politicians in South Africa make these very utopian speeches, they would, especially the president of South Africa, they would then credit Xi Jinping of China, of course, for inspiring them to work towards a particular goals and so forth. Of course, then the South African government and the ruling party are still committed to Marxism and Leninism, and they believe that because China can do it, or if China can do it, or in as far as China can do it, then it can work in South Africa. So they see China as an inspiration in that sense. But other than that, and I think most importantly, also very important I would say from an American perspective, is to understand that if South Africa collapses, if it becomes some form of a next Zimbabwe, it would lead to high levels of destabilization in sub-Saharan Africa, which of course would lead to destabilization of the African continent, which would certainly lead to waves of immigration into Europe and America. But it would also open the door for countries like China or other adversaries of the US to step in and to strengthen its grip on the African continent, which is, of course, a strategic place on the globe, but also very rich in resources and so forth.
Sir, I know the task is tall, the consequences are high, but I think you've created an extraordinary roadmap for people to understand what's really going on in this great country. For folks who want to read your document, what's the best way for people to get a hold of this report? We've put it up on Just the News.
Yeah, well, so as you mentioned in the beginning, I'm involved with a think tank and an advocacy group called Lex Libertas. It's the Latin spelling LEX, Libertas. .org.za. That's the website. People can find the report there. And of course, I would like to encourage people, if they want to be more involved, they can sign up to our newsletter, or they can sign up to contribute to the work that we are doing at Lex Libertas to work towards a more viable political dispensation in South Africa.
So very important. Dr. Roots, thank you so much for your time today. We look forward to having you back on the show real soon. Wow.
Thank you very much. I would love to come back.
That would be great. What a conversation. What a conversation. I think you gotta really keep an eye on South Africa. I think it's one of the most important developments in the world right now. All right, quick break. When we come back, Dan Sanders revealed that he had been battling bladder cancer. We'll have Dr. Peter McCullough here to take a look at some of the latest stories about all the cancer. We're seeing it everywhere these days. Why? Why is it? Is there a higher rate? We'll ask the doctor right after these messages.
Welcome back, everybody. We have seen recent reports for months about an uptick in rapid cancers. Even some high-profile celebrities have had some very scary run-ins with it. One includes NFL Hall of Famer Deion Sanders, who's only 57 years old. He recently underwent surgery to remove bladder cancer. So joining us now to talk about all of that, he is world-renowned doctor and chief scientific officer at the Wellness Company. He's also the author of the new book, Vaccines, Mythology, Ideology, and Reality. Dr. Peter McCullough, who always gives us the reality side of things. Thanks for being here, sir.
Thank you.
All right, Deion Sanders, 57 years old, bladder cancer. I think for a lot of us, we keep hearing this same refrain, and it's getting a little alarming. Are we just hearing more about it, or is it actually happening more frequently?
Well, I'm broadcasting from Dallas, and here in Dallas, we love Deion Sanders, former Dallas Cowboy, absolutely, two-way player, played baseball, incredible sports figure, incredible father and family man. He's been racked with COVID-19 vaccine complications from the very beginning. He had a family history of peripheral arterial disease. He previously had turf toe when he played, and so he had altered anatomy of his foot. He developed COVID-19 vaccine blood clots, arterial and venous, and several years ago, after he was pushing the vaccine hard, we know he took multiple doses. He nearly lost his leg. He had multiple surgeries. He made a docu-series on this. It's been absolutely tragic. He didn't put two and two together that the vaccines had promoted his lower extremity blood clot syndrome. And now we hear that he has severe invasive bladder cancer requiring a total replacement of the bladder. It's essentially unheard of. I've never seen that in my clinical practice in a man in his 50s. This is a very, very serious surgery. You have to take part of the colon, refashion the bladder, connect the ureters, the urethra. This is a big deal. It's actually a modern surgical miracle that he's had complete extirpation of the bladder. But we have to ask the question, why? And until oncologists and surgeons and the victims themselves, until they ask the question, could the COVID-19 vaccine be related to what we call a turbo cancer? That is a very aggressive cancer we're not going to get a level set on reality. There are now thousands of papers pointing to the fact that the new genetic messenger RNA vaccines could promote cancer.
And despite that evidence, there is an extraordinary push to start developing the next mRNAs for anything and everything we can think of. Why is the industry so invested in something that has so many red flashing lights around it?
You know, there was a paper published in British Medical Journal by Lalani and colleagues that really outlined a love affair that the biomedical community has had with messenger RNA. It goes back to the 1980s. Countries have invested tens of billions of dollars in this, maybe hundreds of billions. And it's the pipe dream of being able to take the genetic code for any protein, insert it in the body, and then have the body make that protein. It is, in a sense, a dream for cancer or for protein deficiency syndromes. But to unleash a vaccine where the genetic code for the potentially lethal and disease-causing spike protein, to have that be the first application has been a complete disaster. Now we see messenger RNA for respiratory syncytial virus not needed because we have an antigen-based vaccine anyway, and self-replicating messenger RNA vaccines in humans and in our pets. There seems to be a reckless abandon to advance this technology on humanity, on life in general. And I think we really have to throw up flags of caution right now. I personally think that all messenger RNA should be removed from human use, and it should only be used in the setting of research where people sign informed consent.
Dr. McCullough, we've had conversations with you about a lot of the disasters and issues in our healthcare system, the medical system, pharmaceuticals, and it all ties in together. If we removed pharmaceutical drug manufacturer ads from TV and therefore remove that power from them to advertise on these networks and therefore pull funding if they don't like what they're saying, how much of these problems would that solve?
Well, yeah, I think it would immediately bring fair balance to a report. So, the medical reporting division of any big broadcasting company is completely at the mercy of the pharmaceutical funding. Mm-hmm. So let's say a drug makes a particular blood thinner. If there was problems with a blood thinner, that company would now allow any medical report of something that went against their product on the platform. And the pharmaceutical advertising is very big during evening newscasts and adult programming. And it's far too influential. Only the United States and New Zealand have it. I think it should be removed. We should have, just like there's no tobacco advertising, we should have no pharmaceutical advertising. It's adding cost to prescription drugs. It's misleading the public. It's frustrating doctors. And it's actually, inserting bias into medical reporting for the entire channel.
Mm-hmm. So important. One last thing, I want to finish where we started, and that is we talked about cancer. A lot of people are seeing some interest in what used to be a dirty word during COVID. Ivermectin, you said it, you got slapped around on social media, but it actually is showing some promise in many places. Tell us a little bit about its role in cancer research right now.
Multiple preclinical studies demonstrate ivermectin has anti-cancer properties, and it's a wonderful off-target effect of the drug, as well as antiparasitics like fenbendazole and mebendazole. Yeah. Wellness company, we've combined them into a fixed product used for a parasite cleanse. Many use it off-label for anti-neoplastic properties, but there should be a strong signal, strong call from the National Cancer Institute of the National, the NIH, to actually study ivermectin and anti-parasitic drugs. They've studied statins. They've studied other repurposed drugs for cancer. Why are they delaying in studying ivermectin and antiparasitics like fenbendazole, mebendazole? There should be protocols. People should be in them. I would strongly support them. But in the meantime, people aren't waiting. They are frustrated on the NCI and the NIH. They're going to the wellness company for solutions.
Yeah, you gave them that freedom, which is really important.
Yeah. And I do wonder why, but I also assume that it has something to do with money and the fact that drugs like ivermectin are a lot cheaper. But Dr. Peter McCullough, you always have such great information for us, Chief Scientific Officer over at the Wellness Company. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And for everyone in our audience, please go over to twc.health/justnews today and use the promo code JUSTNEWS. You're going to get 10% off on any order from the Wellness Company. That's twc.health/justnews. Use the promo code JUSTNEWS to save 10% on all of their great products. We'll be back on the other side. Welcome back, everybody. I want to start this final segment saying thank you to Derek Perry, a good guy with a gun in Michigan who stopped that stabbing perpetrator outside of the Walmart. That's what happens when good people have firearms and they can protect their communities.
You look at all the citizens involved, all the people that went to help. You see people putting tourniquets on, trying to save people. All those victims are still alive despite horrific knifings that they underwent through. Really a remarkable thing. And now today, just a few hours after that, you see the sad story in Reno where right in the morning as people were getting up, they're gunned down heading into a casino. Again, we don't know all the details here, but mental illness is definitely a big issue in Michigan. This guy had a history of digging up bodies and the court records. It's a really strange case, but all of the negativity and horrors aside, you see heroism. Everyday Americans are generous and good people, and they always rise to the occasion when there's a crisis.
Absolutely. Praise God for him, for Derek
Amen.
Perry. All righty, so on a more governmental note, Education Secretary Linda McMahon announced that on August 1st, this was a provision in the big, beautiful bill, interest rates or interest on student loans, it's going to kick back in, so people are able to go over to, I'm trying to remember the website, studentaid.gov, and they can find better options for paying off their student loans. But, you know, this is what happens when you have someone in office who like Joe Biden, who ignores the courts when they said, you can't do this. This is
ruled unconstitutional. They ruled it unconstitutional. They just kept it going. And it's such a slight to personal responsibility. And, you know, even though they're stuck reversing it and doing the right thing, which is popular, they're even trying to help these students find the best option, even in the transition period, which I think is a compassionate thing to do. But this is one of the many dark legacies of the Biden administration, and a silly one.
Yeah, there are three groups of people who it made me so mad for. Number one, veterans who paid off their school with their service. Number two, people who couldn't afford to go to college. They went to trade school. They became a plumber, a lineman. They bought a truck. They took out a loan to buy a work truck.
Probably
that loan didn't get paid off.
Some of the ones that went to liberal arts college.
And number three, I won't say his name, but like our legal editor who took out student loans and then paid back every single dime.
Yeah,
those
that's what
people,
I did. That's what you did, I'm sure, too. I mean, if you give your word that you're going to pay something back, it's your honor, and you should do it. And Joe Biden, like so many things Joe Biden did, he disgraced the honorable thing to do, whether it was withdrawing honorably from Afghanistan or exempting people from their legal obligations. But the American people had the last word.
Indeed they did.
They put Donald Trump
so
in.
I grew up in the Little Mermaid generation, so I call her Queen Ursula. But Ursula von der Leyen, that 15% tariff rate is down from 30%. So that's great for the EU, but I did see a lot of EU ministers out there
oh my gosh,
moaning and groaning and complaining. We got nothing, they got everything.
They may actually be right about that. Donald Trump made a pretty good deal for America there. I think the criticism in the European Union may be legit. Donald Trump made a good deal.
Here's the thing, though, for Ursula. I keep wanting to call her Queen Ursula. Ursula von der Leyen. For her, she was stuck between a rock and a hard place because if she let the 30% go in, she was going to get thrown out.
And also the continent would have been crushed.
Yeah, it would have been absolutely, devastating for her. So she really, I feel for her. I don't think she had much of a choice. What would you have done?
I think if I'm Donald Trump, I make this deal realizing that she has that leverage problem.
Yeah.
He's so good. The art of the deal, which he used for business, is the art of the political deal. Now, he knows what everyone's weakness is, and he plays into it. So, all right, I got a question for you.
Uh-oh.
Does he or doesn't he? Does Bruce Pearl jump in and run for Senate?
I hope not. I hope not.
You're just thinking about your Auburn basketball
team. I know, it's very
team.
selfish. It is a very self-serving reason.
Yeah.
Listen, I love my country and I love Auburn both, and please don't make me choose.
I know, that's a hard one. I'll tell you what, he'd be a dynamic candidate. I watched recently one of his speeches on leadership man, he's got the leadership thing down, and Washington has so few leaders right now.
know.
I mean, Donald Trump obviously aside, but wow, he would just bring a dynamism here.
Let me tell you, when he first descended upon the beautiful plains of Auburn, Alabama, he went from classroom to classroom in my old stomping ground, the business building, and he did it in a lot of other departments as well. Nobody knew who he was. He had not built, he had no prior relationships, and he went into classrooms, those big auditorium classrooms, and was rallying students to come to the games. That's who he is.
He's talking to people in Washington right now. Hopeful signs that he might jump in. I mean, that might not be hopeful for you. But
Oh,
it'll be hopeful
Bruce,
for
give it a few years, okay? All right, that's all the time we have for you tonight.